The sentence was delivered without ceremony. By decree of the Interstellar Tribunal, the avian judge intoned, its voice echoing through the chamber, the human-designated Jonah Hale is remanded into the custody of Commander Kale Thara of the Virex Dominion. Duration, indefinite. Purpose, service and supervision. The gavel struck. That was it. No appeal. No explanation that mattered. I stood there in shock, hands bound behind my back, still wearing the torn remnants of my civilian flight suit. Around me, aliens whispered, clicks, hisses, harmonic murmurs. Every one of them avoided my eyes. I had heard the name Kale Thara before. Everyone had. She was called the Black Talon of Virex, a living weapon who had crushed 3 rebellions and pacified entire systems. A commander who never lost a campaign. A being rumored to execute her own officers if they hesitated in battle. And now, I belonged to her. 2 armored Virex guards seized my arms and dragged me from the chamber. Their claws were cold, their grips merciless. I didn't resist. What was the point? Against a Dominion commander, resistance wasn't bravery, it was suicide. We boarded a warship that looked less like a vessel and more like a blade forged from black metal. No windows. No ornamentation. Only angular surfaces and weapon ports that hummed with restrained violence. The guards marched me through endless corridors until massive doors parted with a deep, resonant growl. Inside stood Commander Kale Thara. She was taller than any human I'd ever seen, her frame powerful and predatory. Her exoskeletal armor was fused directly into her biology, dark crimson veins glowing faintly beneath obsidian plating. 4 burning eyes fixed on me, each one sharp enough to feel like a physical weight. She didn't sit. She loomed. So, she said, her voice low and layered, like steel scraping stone, this is the human. I swallowed. Jonah Hale. Civilian engineer. I never fired a weapon during the conflict. I know, she replied. That is why you survived. That wasn't comforting. She circled me slowly, boots striking the deck with deliberate menace. Your tribunal calls this a sentence. They believe placing you under my authority is punishment. Her taloned finger lifted my chin, forcing me to meet her eyes. Do you believe that? I couldn't speak. She released me with a snort of something like amusement. You are fragile, underfed, exhausted. And yet, you endured 6 cycles of siege on Outpost K-19. I was hiding, I said weakly. She stopped. Turned. No, she corrected. You were repairing life support systems while under bombardment. You rerouted power manually when the automation failed. You carried wounded beings twice your mass. My heart pounded. I just did what needed doing. Kale Thara stared at me for a long moment. Then she laughed. It was terrifying. A deep, echoing sound that vibrated through the room and made my knees weak. That, she said, is why you are terrifying, human. I blinked. Me? Yes, she said sharply. You lack claws, fangs, armor. And yet you persist. You break, and still you move forward. You are not a warrior species, yet you produce warriors anyway. I didn't feel like a warrior. I felt like a prisoner. My service, as it turned out, was not slavery or torment. It was work. Hard work. Kale Thara assigned me to her flagship's engineering corps. The Virex technology was brutal, efficient, and utterly unforgiving. Systems were designed with the assumption that failure meant death and often enforced it. Within days, my hands were blistered, my muscles aching, my mind stretched to its limits. And Kael'thara watched. Always. She observed from elevated platforms, from behind armored glass, from the shadows. She never interfered. Never helped. She simply evaluated. When a plasma conduit ruptured and vaporized a Virex technician, alarms screamed. Others froze. I didn't. I crawled into the access shaft, sealed the breach manually, and rerouted the flow using tools not meant for human hands. I screamed as the heat burned my skin, but the system stabilized. The ship survived. That night, Kael'thara summoned me again. You should be dead, she said. I know, I replied hoarsely. Why did you act? She demanded. You are not bound by honor codes. Not genetically compelled. I thought about it. Because if I didn't, more people would die. She stared at me, silent. From that moment on, everything changed. I was no longer guarded constantly. I was allowed to move freely within certain decks. Virex soldiers began nodding at me, not mockingly, but respectfully. Weeks passed. Then months. We entered a border war against the Kareth swarm, a species that devoured planets. During the first engagement, a Kareth boarding pod breached the hull near the reactor. Kael'thara personally led the counterattack. I watched from the control room as her forces were overwhelmed. Numbers too great. The reactor destabilizing. There was no time. I ran. Ignoring orders. Ignoring fear. I grabbed a pressure suit and sprinted toward the breach. I rerouted power, triggered emergency venting, and manually sealed the reactor chamber, locking myself inside with the radiation spike. I expected to die. Instead, the emergency shields held. Kael'thara tore the doors open moments later, her armor scorched, eyes blazing. She lifted me effortlessly and carried me to safety. You defied my command, she growled. I coughed weakly. Yes, You endangered yourself. Yes. Why? I met her gaze, barely conscious. Because you weren't coming back. And the ship needed you. For the first time, I saw something in her expression crack. Respect. After the war, the tribunal reconvened. My sentence was reviewed. Kael'thara stood before them, towering and unyielding. The human is no longer a prisoner, she declared. He is under my protection. The judges protested. Laws were cited. Precedents invoked. Kael'thara extended her claws. I will remind this tribunal, she said calmly, that without this human, my flagship and this sector would be ash. Silence followed. I was released. Offered transport back to human space. I declined. Now, I stand on the bridge of a Dominion warship, not as a captive, but as a human liaison and chief systems architect. Kael'thara commands the fleet. I advise her. She is still terrifying. But now, when she looks at me, it is not as a sentence, but as an ally. And the galaxy is learning something new. You do not sentence humans to monsters. You introduce monsters to humans. And hope they survive us.